there's no way for us to share that information.
Hastings, are you online?
Yes, I am. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. So I think we got everybody. So we are ready to start. So a little virtual gavel. Good afternoon. This is Michael Marks, Chairman of the Apex Planning Board. I hope that all board members, staff, and their families are safe and healthy. I would like to call to order the February 8th, 2021 Apex Planning Board. Since we are virtual, we will take attendance via roll call. When I say your name, please respond. Michael Marks is here. Reggie Skinner.
Present.
Mark Steele.
Here.
Tina Sherman.
Here.
Tommy Pate.
Present.
Tim Royal.
Here.
Keith Braswell.
Present.
Jeff Hastings.
Present.
Ryan Akers.
Yes, sir.
And Elaine Boyle. Who's Elaine? Elaine was on.
She may be rebooting her computer.
I'll just, for Diane, should we wait for her to acknowledge, or when she comes back in, when I see her name come back up?
Yeah, I think that you could do the preliminary items that don't require votes.
Okay. All right, so at this time, I'd like to ask Mark Steele if you would provide the invocation for today's meeting.
Lord, please keep our town, its residents, and its staff safe as we pray for the end of this pandemic. Tonight, as we consider the matters before us, please guide our minds as well as our hearts to consider what is best for our town. Amen.
All right, thank you, Mark. Now, if you please stand and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
which
for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So just a couple introductory messages. For anyone joining on the phone today, today's presentation is posted on the planning board. I hope the link is working. That website address is www.apexnc.org/182 for the presentation. As a reminder, members of the public who have called in today are in listen-only mode. All participants will be muted initially. Roll call for voting on action items will be conducted by calling out each member of the planning board. Presenters will indicate when they are advancing their slides to allow the audience to follow along with the presentation that's available online. And if any disruptions occur via either video, audio, or phone, staff will first mute all, and then at my direction, we'll make sure any disruptive audio will be muted by the staff. For the planning board members, while presentations are occurring, we'll have all the lines muted except for the presenter to help with audio quality. When we get to questions and discussion points, the chair will indicate that the floor is open for any comments. At this time, you can either raise your hand if your video's on or unmute yourself and ask the question. The chat box should not be used for anything other than technical difficulties to let staff know you're having a problem. When you do come online to ask a question or state a comment, please state your name when you're unmuted and then ask your question so the group knows who is speaking and the minutes can be documented correctly. But please remember to remute yourself when you are done speaking. When making a comment, I suggest that you turn your video on just so we can document who's talking. And then during any roll call voting, please have your video turned on so that during roll call, we know who is voting and we can see that, and it helps staff with the meeting minutes. If a voting member logs off, we'll pause briefly to allow them for them to get back on. This will avoid having to repeat any information. So any questions from the board members? All right. Diane, do we have any items of information for today?
Yes, we have two. First of all, I wanted to let everyone know that the affordable housing plan was adopted by town council unanimously. It was approved with the version that the steering committee had recommended. So that's where that ended up. And then wanted just to welcome Elaine Boyle, our new planning board member. We're glad to have her with us, and I had sent you all her bio, so if you hadn't had a chance to check that out, you can.
I'll just check. Elaine, did you get back online?
I am here, but my video is still not working, so I'm still working on that. But thank you for the welcome.
Okay, yeah.
And then just, I guess, one other reminder, if you are able to turn your video on, which I understand some of you can't, but if you are, when you're voting, it's better to have your video on, even though we're doing roll call. And if you can't turn it on, that's okay. It's, you know, one of those things.
Yep. Best efforts. All right. So now we'll enter the public comment period for comments on any non-agenda public hearing topics today. So check with staff. Do we have any public comments that came in by the Friday noon deadline?
There were none for public comment period.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. All right, so next we will move on. We have two consent items for today. The minutes from the January 11th meeting and then the minutes from the January 13th when we had the voting and further discussion. So for the January 11th minutes, any discussion and or possible motion?
This is Mark Steele. I move that we adopt the minutes as presented.
Okay, I have a motion from Mark Steele. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
That was Ryan. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the approving the minutes from the January 11th, 2021 remote meeting say, oh, we got to go by roll call. So Michael Marks votes yes. Reggie Skinner.
Yes.
Mark Steele.
Yes.
Tina Sherman.
Yes.
Tommy Pate.
Yes.
Tim Royal.
Yes.
Keith Braswell.
Yes.
Brian Akers.
Yes.
And Elaine Boyle.
Yes.
Okay. Second consent item, the minutes from the January 13th remote meeting. There was one correction that we wanted to get. I don't know if you saw your emails, the rest of the board, but Jeff Hastings was not on initially, but did join at 5:26. So Bonnie sent out a revised version of that, adding that at 5:26. Jeff entered or joined the meeting. So that was the only change that I wanted to make. Are there any other adjustments or possible motions?
This is Mark. I'll give a motion to approve them as amended by Bonnie.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the amended minutes. Do I have a second?
This is Tina. I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Tina. So we have a motion and a second. Michael Marks votes yes to approve the minutes as amended. Reggie Skinner.
Yes.
Mark Steele.
Yes.
Tina Sherman.
Yes.
Tommy Pate.
Yes.
Tim Royal.
Yes.
Keith Braswell.
Yes.
Ryan Akers.
Yes.
And Elaine Boyle.
Yes.
Okay, the minutes from the January 13th remote meeting passed unanimously. Now we'll begin the public hearing portion of today's agenda. So for the public listening today, any public comments received via email or voicemail to the town up to noon on Friday, February 5th, will be read into the record at the appropriate agenda item today. Comments shared by this means specified above between noon and 24 hours after the end of today's meeting will be read during the February 10th, 2021 Planning Board meeting. At the February 10th meeting, Planning Board will hear any additional comments received and then vote on those items for recommendation to Town Council. So item number one, Lauren is going to present the public hearing regarding rezoning case 20 CZ16, the Kusumano property. So Lauren.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is rezoning case 20 CZ16 Kusumano property located at 2609 New Hill Olive Chapel Road. On the context map, you'll see that this property is located in the general southwestern area in New Hill. Next slide. The aerial shows this property more of a zoomed in, and the property is a total of 1.90 acres and is located on the east side of New Hill Olive Chapel Road and south of the Woodbury subdivision and east of Bellaterra, which was formerly known as Jordan Vista. This property is vacant and cleared. On the zoning districts map shown, you'll see that this property is currently zoned Wake County Residential 40W. The adjacent zonings are all Wake County Residential 40W. On the proposed zoning district map, the applicant is proposing to rezone this property to medium density conditional zoning. The 2045 land use map.
Lauren, just to interrupt real quick, can you just announce the page number that you're on, just so that the people viewing can see it and know what page you're on?
Mr. Marks, this is Amanda. This is just a quick update. The only, there's no dial-in option for the planning board this time. We're solely streaming on YouTube like all of the other boards are doing. So that's why the slide numbers are not present.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the correction.
Thank you.
So the 2045 land use map shown identifies a subject property as medium density residential. The proposed rezoning to medium density residential conditional zoning is consistent with that land use map classification. The applicant conducted neighborhood meetings on November 23rd, 2020 and January 25th, 2021, and both copies of the neighborhood reports are in your packet. The applicant is proposing a single family and accessory apartment and has provided 13 residential architectural conditions as well as condition 13, 14, and 15, which I will read. The existing parcel is served by 2 driveways accessing New Hill Olive Chapel Road. Subdivision of the parcel into 2 or more lots shall not increase the total number of existing driveways. The minimum front building setback shall be 40 feet from the current right-of-way. And the last one, all single-family homes are to be pre-configured with conduit for a solar energy system. The full list of the proposed zoning conditions can also be found on page 2 of the staff report. A letter of impact from Wake County Public School System was received for this rezoning and is included in the staff report packet. Wake County Public School System indicates that schools at all grade levels within the current assignment area for the proposed rezoning or in development are anticipated to have sufficient capacity for future students. The Environmental Advisory Board reviewed this rezoning at their November 19th, 2020 meeting and did not offer any suggested zoning conditions. Approval of the rezoning is reasonable because the proposed medium-density residential conditional zoning district is consistent with the 2045 land use plan. The proposed rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because it will permit single-family residential development consistent and compatible with the surrounding area. In addition, the proposed rezoning will allow the property to connect to town water and sewer services. Planning staff can recommend approval with conditions as offered by the applicant. I'm available to answer questions as well as the applicant who is on this team's call. Thank you.
Any questions for staff at this point? Hearing none, would the applicant like to make a statement?
No, I'd just like to say thank you for considering this, and we look forward to working with the town of Apex.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we're at the public hearings. Did staff receive any comments during the public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and we'll bring it back just for discussion. Remember, we will be voting on these on Wednesday evening. So any discussion, or if not, we will move to the next agenda item. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, meets the zoning conditions. So I don't think it should be much of an issue. So with that, unless I hear anything from anybody else on the board, we'll move to item number 2. And Shannon is going to present the public hearing regarding the amendments to the Apex Transportation Plan for the proposed Felton Grove High School. So take it away, Shannon.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So the proposed amendments this evening are for both our Thoroughfare and Collector Street plan map, as well as our bicycle and pedestrian system plan map. And I will note that these are related to the next item on your agenda, which is the rezoning case associated with the proposed high school. So to orient you to the vicinity, this is Stevenson Road here, which is on our eastern border with the town of Cary. And this is Sunset Lake Road, which is our southern border with the town of Holly Springs. The large rectangular parcel here is the proposed high school site. So the first set of amendments are for our Thoroughfare and Collector Street plan map. The first proposed amendment is to remove the future east-west major collector street between Smith Road Extension and Thriftwood Drive. The second proposed amendment is to remove the future north-south minor collector street between the major collector and Sunset Lake Road. We are also proposing to remove the minor collector street between Dairy Down Lane and Thriftwood Drive. And then finally, just to remove the minor collector designation of Arrowhead Drive, since it would no longer connect to another collector street. So unlike other types of development, because of state law, anything shown on our Thoroughfare and Collector Street plan map, the town would be responsible for building as part of development of the high school. Since we have many other municipal priorities for our infrastructure projects, and these connections will be difficult to complete all the way through, both to Sunset Lake Road and to Reunion Creek Parkway, staff are recommending that we remove these from our plan. We did discuss these amendments with Public Works and Transportation, police, and fire department staff, and all agreed that they are supportive of the proposed amendments. It was noted that these connections would be nice for both connectivity and future emergency access. However, it was agreed that there are other ways around to this site, and other projects on our overall plan are of higher priority to all of those departments. The next exhibit is showing the same area, but this is our bicycle and pedestrian system plan map. So most of the recommended changes here are result of removing those roadways from the plan. So they include removing the side path from the 2 minor collector streets that would no longer be on our plan, and removing the side path from the future east-west major collector street. I will note that in this, for this connection with the rezoning case that you'll hear next, the Wake County Public School System is proposing a condition that they would provide a future side path connection from Thriftwood to their western property boundary, so they are setting up for future connectivity. That wouldn't be shown on our map since that's not a public road. The only additional changes here are that we are proposing to add a greenway connection from the future school site over to Smith Road Extension and then over to Middle Creek Greenway, so that as this area redevelops or the town is able to move forward additional greenway projects, this would establish a way for bicyclists and pedestrians to travel to the east to reach the school site. These changes have been reviewed with the same departments as well as our Parks and Greenways planner, and all were supportive of these amendments as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions for Shannon on the removing these collector streets as part of the amendment?
Chairman, this is Ryan Akers. I did have one quick question. This is kind of a curveball off the wall. What is the use that the added proposed greenway that goes? There's like a lot of topography going through that site. Yeah, what is that?
That's currently a landfill.
Oh, okay. It's
an inert debris landfill, C&D landfill.
Okay. So nobody has any concerns about that greenway use going through there? Well, I'm sure you guys vetted that, so no worries. That answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, not once it's closed. We won't be going out there while it's active.
Thanks, Ryan. Anybody else have a question for Shannon? All right, hearing none. So we'll open the public hearing. So Shannon or staff, did we have any comments received during the comment period?
No, we did not receive any comments.
Okay. All right. And so we'll close the public hearing. So any other discussions regarding these amendments to the both bicycle and traffic transportation plan? All right, hearing none, I'll close this item. This will come back on the 10th for more further discussion, possible any other comments, and vote. So thanks, Shannon. We'll now move to item number 3, that Shelley is going to present this public hearing regarding rezoning case 20 CZ12, the Felton Grove High School. So, take it away, Shelley. Shelley, if you're talking, you may be on mute, Shelley.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everybody. This is the Felton Grove High School rezoning case. As one second. There we go. As Shannon pointed out earlier, this site is kind of on the extreme southwestern corner of the town's jurisdiction. Here's Stevenson. And then just to the south off the page is Sunset Lake. Immediately to the east of the site is the Briarwood Farms Mobile Home Park. Ryan, this is the Curran Brothers inert debris landfill down here to the south and west-ish. We also have some large lot single-family homes here to the west and the north. And then over here on the southeastern side is the Indian Hills subdivision. The site is roughly 68 acres, and it is currently zoned medium density conditional zoning, and it's going to be rezoned to medium density conditional zoning. The reason why we're having to rezone this is actually because we need to change the conditions on this. The existing conditions don't allow for school as a use. They have a very general medium density residential bent to them. And at the time that the property was rezoned, we did not realize that this was going to be a site that the school would select for it. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this to show me full screen mode, but there we go. The 2045 land use map, which we did update recently, designates this as a school. Because of the uses that will be listed in the rezoning, this does meet the 2045 land use map as well. The site itself is completely wooded with several perennial and intermittent streams throughout it. Current road access is off of Stevenson Road down Dairy Down Lane, and from, again, off Stevenson through Thriftwood Drive. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on October 27th, 2020. There was no one in attendance. The neighborhood meeting report is in your staff report packet as well, though. The applicant is proposing the following uses: school, public or private, communication tower, camouflage stealth, communication tower, public safety, wireless communication facility, wireless support structure, and church or place of worship. 3 of those items will need a special use permit if they are placed on this site. The communication towers, camouflage stealth, or public safety both will. And then there's a typo on your staff report. Church or place of worship should also have an S after it for a special use permit. The applicant is also offering the following conditions. These were developed in close conjunction with the applicant and satisfy a number of staff's concerns. After I'm done reading them, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Condition number 1, this project shall preserve trees measuring 18 inches in diameter at breast height or greater to the maximum extent reasonably possible. In compliance with the UDO and to optimize survival of the landscaping, an extension of up to 6 months' time may be provided for the installation of landscaping after a CO would otherwise be issued. Number 2, to support reestablishment of forest, a reforestation seed mix will be used in disturbed areas with slopes of 3:1 or less, which are not located within RCAs or stormwater control measures. To expedite growth and avoid erosion, a slope stabilizing mix with conservation seed mix shall be used on slopes greater than 3:1 but less than 2:1, which are also not within RCA or SCMs. That was done because RCAs and SCMs have different planting standards within the UDO, so this will just apply to any outside of those areas. Number 3, this project shall dedicate a 20-foot on-site public greenway easement and within it provide a 10-foot greenway path and or 10-foot sidewalk connection from the driveway connection at Thriftwood Drive, located here, to the western side of the property line, roughly this general area. And the reason why we say and or is because the design of the site's not completed yet, so we don't know if it will run along a driveway or be completely separated from the driveway. Depending on which one it is, it would be considered a side path or a greenway. And we didn't want to kind of force something that hasn't been designed yet. Condition number 4, this project shall also provide off-site a combined greenway and sanitary sewer easement to accommodate future greenway construction by others. To comply with Section 900 of the town's standard specifications, the combined public utility and greenway easement shall be recorded providing no less than 30 feet in width or 10 feet beyond the minimum required for the sanitary sewer, whichever is greater. The public greenway easement shall extend from the western boundary of the site, roughly here, across the landfill site, roughly in this general area, to the edge of the landfill's western boundary, so in this general area as well. Condition number 5, the vehicular use area shading, which is described in UDO section 8.2.5C, is not required in the area between the parking deck and parking lot near the site's eastern boundary. Instead, the same number of trees required to meet this standard will be planted elsewhere on the site. The remainder of the site shall meet the requirements of that section to the maximum extent reasonably possible. Condition 6, the 2045 transportation plan shows a future north-south minor collector along the eastern property line starting at Dairy Downs here and continuing to the north. This project shall provide half of the required 60-foot right-of-way as shown on the plan. This assumes, of course, that the transportation plan amendments that Shannon brought before you earlier are approved. Improvements to the existing public streets, condition 7, which are Thriftwood Drive and Dairy Down Lane, shall be provided to satisfy such NCDOT requirements, which are minimally necessary to provide adequate public access as state-maintained roadways to Stevenson Road, and which are made upon review of the traffic study for the project. Consequently, the existing public streets are not proposed for upgrades to meet Town of Apex standards, nor are they proposed for dedication to the Town of Apex. Condition number 8, the northern perimeter buffer shall be a 20-foot type B buffer, except where segmental retaining wall tiebacks would encroach. In those areas, it shall be no less than a 15-foot type A buffer. There's some, and then condition 9, cast in place retaining walls shall be permitted within the western 20-foot type B buffer, as long as sufficient landscaping is planted around and on top of the walls to meet the requirements of the 20-foot type B buffer. These last two conditions are because of the extreme nature of the topography on this site. There are several large streams running through it, and some impressive topography change, and it's to allow the school system the ability to have a little bit more flexibility. If they don't need those, then that would be ideal. But if they do need them, then that provides us the flexibility that we need without having to come back for a variance or additional zoning conditions later. As we've discussed, Dairy Downs Lane and Thriftwood Drive are the two connection points to the site at the moment. The earlier transportation plan amendments were to remove a connection here to the south, one that would have gone to the west here, and then another that would have run along this property line to the north. When we began reviewing the rezoning and for this particular school, staff was not aware that state law had been changed in 2017 to mandate that the town has to actually pay for all improvements that are required based on our transportation plan, not land use plan. We had been under the assumption that we would be required to pay for the difference. So for example, if the school had to build a residential road through there, then we would pay for the difference between building the residential road or building the major collector that went through, because there's a difference in pavement widths and depths and design criteria for that. We found out during the review process for that rezoning that that's erroneous. We actually are required to pay for 100% of all roads constructed on school sites that are required and that are constructed on school sites that we require. In addition, we're required to require the applicant to build these roads if they show up on our transportation plan. So in order to be able to meet our funding, we only had a certain amount set aside in the capital improvement plan for this school. It would not have been sufficient, and we have a number of other priorities, including Jesse Drive, which we're having difficulty funding at the moment. So in order to meet those funding criteria, we requested removal of those roads off of the transportation plan. This means that Dairy Down and Thriftwood will be our two access points. To be honest, those other points probably would have been difficult to construct anyway. One of them ran straight through the landfill's entrance here to the south. And the landfill is still open and active, and that would have required some significant coordination with them. And then the other one would have run along their northern property line, and again, would have required some significant coordination as well. When we reviewed this, staff agreed that the public good is being of having the high school get rezoned and built outweighs the concerns that we have regarding some of the transportation plan issues. So we think that the greater public good is in rezoning the property. Planning staff recommends approval of the rezoning with one condition to be added. If the following condition is added, a 100-foot riparian buffer shall be provided for all perennial streams in accordance with the requirements of UDO Section 6.1 as of August 2020. The reason that we're asking for this condition is that in February 2022, the town's NPDES Phase 2 permit will expire. Unless it's renewed, our ability to enforce the 100-foot riparian buffer within the Big Branch and Middle Creek watershed basins will end at that time. Middle Creek runs roughly along here. You can kind of see a portion of an electric easement and stuff, and it kind of runs in that general area. To mitigate that loss, we're requesting a zoning condition for any rezoning in these two basins to ensure that the 100-foot buffer on perennial streams remains. Otherwise, an amended subdivision or site plan could be submitted to reduce the buffer to 50 feet. Given the concerns that our residents and our town council members have expressed regarding tree protection and environmental preservation, a zoning condition is currently our best tool to make sure that the 100-foot buffer is provided on all the streams. To that end, Planning and Water Resources staff are requesting this riparian buffer condition on all rezoning petitions within the Big Branch and Middle Creek watershed basins. If that condition is added, then planning staff considers this rezoning to be reasonable and in the public interest because it maintains a valuable tool to provide tree canopy and improve water quality, and also permits the construction of a high school that's needed to support the growing residential development in this area. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The applicant is also on the call as well.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Anybody from the board have any additional questions for Shelley?
Chairman, I do have a question for Shelley. That condition number 7 about the connector street. Sorry, it's Thriftwood Drive, and right. I think also is what I'm trying to understand. Those look like county roads, I guess DOT roads, but they're really. I mean, if you start having a lot of bus traffic, I'm trying to understand, like, what is that condition actually saying?
It's essentially saying that the town is not going to make isn't going to make the school improve those roads. If the roads are required to be improved, then that recommendation and requirement is going to come from DOT. Part of the reason for that.
And it's a DOT road too, right?
Right. Part of the reason for that is we just don't have the money right now to upgrade these roads. And we don't know if DOT does, but we know that we definitely don't. So by saying that we are not requiring anything, we don't spend town funds on it.
Okay. And another, just a quick question. One of the conditions, number 5, I was talking about the VUA shading. It makes reference to a parking deck. Does the applicant already have a layout? I'm just trying to, on a site this big, if there's a parking deck, I'm kind of surprised about that.
Well, it's not actually that unusual anymore.
Shelley, we need to be careful.
I'm not going to say anything else. I understand, Diane. We actually can't go into details because this is a major site plan, so it's quasi-judicial. What I can tell you is that there's another school in town already that has a parking deck. Apex High School on Lord Duncan was recently redone, and they have a parking deck there, so it's not that unusual. They do have a layout for this site, but I cannot share it with you or share any details about it because of the nature of quasi-judicial public hearings. Sure. I can give you some vague information is all.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else have any other questions for Shelley? If not, would the app, I see Ms. Parker is joined. Would you like to make a statement?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's so good to be here with you again to talk about another new school in Apex. This particular school site, as Shelley mentioned, is planned for development of a high school, Felton Grove High School. Construction is slated to begin in early February of 2022. And if all goes well, it will open to staff and students in the fall of 2024. I wanted to note, as I did last time that I was before you, the explosive growth and success that Apex has had. In the last 15 years, Apex has more than doubled in size, from 29,115 residents to nearly 60,000. In that same time period, growth along the Western Wake Corridor, along that 55 I-540 improvement corridor, has been explosive as well. We have addressed 15,500 seats in the last 15 years. 26% of those were in Apex, but the current and future growth is driving the need for this particular school. In fact, in the next 5 years of our capital plan, we've got plans to build in excess of 1.3 million square feet to add another 6,400 seats in the corridor. 55% of those are in Apex. So I think that typifies that we are doing our best to try to catch up to what's going in Apex, as the market share, if you will, of what we're building is heavily loaded here, as it should be. High school crowding in that area averages about 117% among the 5 high schools in the area. There are about 65 modular classrooms that we've had to already add to those. So clearly, we have a need for a high school after a lot of searching. Although this site has some rather challenging topography, it's the last available large acreage site and exactly where we need it. It's going to be helping us to bring on 2,240 seats in the fall of 2024. So we're very excited about it. As Shelley mentioned, the main purpose of this rezoning is a simple one. When the previous owner rezoned the property to medium density, schools were a permitted use. But to tailor it more closely to the planned residential development, they removed schools as a use. We're simply trying to put back in what the UDO would have permitted from the start. So it's not a new zoning of significant change. It's replacing that particular school use. Staff recommended a riparian buffer condition, and I wanted to speak to that just briefly and sort of explain why. We've had a lot of really good conversations about a number of buffer issues that you heard on the conditions, and we share the board's valuation of, or rather valuing, the environmental conditions and protection of trees and watersheds, and we're doing all of that we can. The thing that struck us as odd about this particular request is the requested language reflects exactly what the UDO requires. We feel that will be very effectively addressed in the site plan that we are working on as diligently as we can. That should come before you within a very short period of time. When we build a school, we build it with a 40 to 50 year lifespan. So we feel like it's going to be a virtual certainty that we'll be complying with the current UDO, which was this condition that was added. The conditions we typically offer are for those atypical situations, and that would be where the UDO, we desire to provide more than the UDO necessitates, or where we need some help to limit something where we're not quite meeting the UDO, but on par, it's balanced, and the balance is leaning in favor of the public good. This one merely reflects the UDO itself. So since we're stewards of taxpayer assets, we don't typically seek to restrict our properties beyond what the UDO is. I understand the NPDES permit that the town has. It's set to expire after we start construction, so presumably our permits would have been complete under the UDO by then. And the current permit was extended after the legislation was passed. So it would seem reasonable that the town has the ability to continue to extend that permit as needed. So all things being considered, we just didn't see that it provided additional benefit and felt like that at the pace we're on, it's a bit of a moot point. I think if we were looking to develop this property in phases or had reason to come back later, that was more likely. Our style and type of development just doesn't really fit it. So with all due respect, we had a long conversation with staff and declined to offer that condition at this time. I also have been made aware of a public comment, and perhaps Shelley can advise me on this. I'm happy to speak generally to it. If it's to be read into the record, I'm happy to wait until after if its context will help.
It will be.
That,
sorry, Betty. It will be read into the record once we open the public hearing.
Okay. Well, then let me speak.
But I don't know if we're allowed to have responses afterwards.
Understood. So
Amanda or Diane, do either of you know?
This is Diane. Yeah, it's just like at the public meeting where if the planning board would like for the applicant to address the items, they can. Okay. It'll probably make a lot more sense to hear the comment before Betty talks about it. So Chairman Marks, would you like to comment?
Yeah, no, I was on mute when I was trying to speak. I was just going to say, Ms. Parker, I'd like to just wait for it to be read in the record. That way we all have what was said, and then we welcome your comments to that.
I'm happy to address them in any way that staff and the board would prefer. So with that, as always, we appreciate the collaboration and expertise that your staff has brought to bear. I think we've had a really good exchange. We're all very excited about the planning that's occurring, and we hope to have to you soon. For the board member who asked earlier about condition 5, and I will tread lightly, Diane, watch me, but generally we're excited to be far enough along in the plan to recognize that we might need some help on that UDO requirement and incorporated it in this way. Beyond that, I concur with Diane and Shelley. I think the site plan presentation you'll hear will provide a lot of enlightenment there. With that, I remain available should you have any questions. We would appreciate your support and approval of our petition. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Does anybody on the board have any other questions for Ms. Parker at this time? All right, so Shelley, it sounds like we do have at least one comment from the public hearing. Do you want to read that?
Yes, please. This came from Mark and Tanya Kumalander. It says, we own the Briarwood Farms residential property adjacent to the Board of Education's proposed school site at 8550 Stevenson Road. On behalf of Briarwood Farms and its 500 residents, we object to the rezoning request for the following reasons, among others. Number one, the board does not have legal access to the property. The only roads that could provide access are Dairy Down Lane and Thriftwood Drive. However, they go through the Briarwood neighborhood and are privately owned and maintained. The board recently sued us, seeking a declaration that these roads are public. We strongly disagree with the board's position. If the board is permitted to use Briarwood's roads, these narrow, privately maintained roads were not designed for and are not equipped to handle large-scale student and school bus traffic necessary to serve a high school. Number two, rezoning would be detrimental to the adjacent Briarwood neighborhood. Briarwood is a high-density residential neighborhood divided into 116 lots occupied mostly by lower-income families. The work that would be required to upgrade and widen Dairy Down and Thriftwood to accommodate high school traffic would likely force some residents living on those roads to relocate. Converting these private residential roads into heavily trafficked collector streets for a high school would disrupt the neighborhood character of Briarwood, cause safety concerns, and introduce school traffic throughout the day and evenings. Under the board's plan, Dairy Down and Thriftwood would provide the only access to the site, and Briarwood residents would bear the entire brunt of the school traffic. Number 3. The board's rezoning proposal would violate Apex's UDO because 1, it would place a school adjacent to an inert debris landfill. They quote UDO section 4.4.3 I1E. 2, it represents spot zoning. 3, the property lacks adequate site-specific standards. And 4, it fails to comply with UDO sections 2.3.2E and 2.3.3. The high school and associated construction would also severely damage the private sewer package plant and creek on Briarwood's property. We reserve the right to submit additional comments after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Was that the only public comment received during the comment period?
That was the only comment we received, yes.
All right. So I guess, Shelley, I don't have the UDOs in front of me. Can you address the 2 that they said that this proposal is not in compliance of 4.4.3.I?
Yes, sir. That particular section, 4.4.3, is actually supplemental standards for an inert debris landfill locating next to an existing school. It's different than what's happening here. There's already an existing inert debris landfill, and the school is locating adjacent to it. We do not have any standards for that situation. Typically, what you would see when a landfill locates next to a school is greater setbacks, thicker buffers, and the location of most of the piles further away from the school or residential area. We don't have supplemental standards in the UDO for the opposite situation.
Okay.
It's considered that if the school locates there adjacent to a landfill, then they've done their homework and they know what's going to happen adjacent to them. The other 2 sections are regarding, excuse me, my throat's just a little bit on the dry side. Development approvals. Those are common review procedures, including our, oh, sorry, wrong section. 2.3.2 is regarding the changes to the zoning district map, and then 2.3.3 is conditional zoning districts. So those are just our typical review processes, and it generally kind of outlines all the processes and review procedures and that kind of thing that are necessary in order to bring a rezoning petition to this level. And there's not a specific section within that other than just the standards for amending the ordinance. Those standards are located on the very last page of your staff report. They're the ones that we always include in your rezonings.
Okay, thank you for the update and clarification.
You're welcome.
So we'll now close the public hearing since Shelley read the only one there, and bring it back to the board for discussion. Any questions for Ms. Parker or Shelley?
Chairman, I have a question, and this may be for staff or Ms. Parker could answer it. If the plans, and again, I know we don't want to get into detail, but if the plans are far enough along, do we know if sewer is going to be extended up to the Briarwood Farms property, like gravity sewer through the site? Do we know?
I cannot give you that amount of detail, unfortunately.
Okay.
The plans are not far enough along, and that would also be more information than the quasi-judicial allows me.
Okay. This is Mark. I have 2 related questions. I'm looking at Google Maps, and it looks like if traffic through that Briarwood Farms is an issue, has the school thought about having traffic come in through the existing entrance to the landfill?
If that's directed at me, sir, Betty Parker, Senior Director of Real Estate Services, there's not an existing entrance that's public that runs to the landfill. That's a driveway for the landfill operations, if you're looking at what I am familiar with. It had appeared on the 2045 transportation plan, but I believe has been discontinued.
Right. Okay.
That is correct. Just to let you know, the section of that site that connects to Sunset Lake is only 60 feet wide. The driveway itself, when I measured it from an aerial, was approximately 18 feet wide. So using that as the public school connection, you don't see it on this slide, unfortunately. I probably should have shown the creeks, but there's actually a creek right about here, and another one that goes up this way. So that would cause more additional creek crossings.
Got it.
And you would have the conflicts between the school and the dump trucks from the site, which we haven't evaluated, except that we're aware it would be quite difficult.
Got it.
Shelley, it may be also interesting to note that there is a stream feature that runs along the southern boundary of the school site. So after threading the needle, as it were, there's additional constructability challenges there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. It looks like the Riftwood entrance would serve basically all of the traffic. Is that true? In and out?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Shelley.
No, go right ahead.
The current plan is to utilize both Jerry Down Lane and Thriftwood. Typically, NCDOT, through its MSTA group, helps us with recommendations for site access, numbers of accesses, on-site queuing lengths, and the like. For a high school site, a minimum of 2 access points would be required. So both of those public roads would be utilized.
But is it, I know MSTA likes to see basically ingressing traffic at one location, egressing at the other. So is this going to operate as like a loop sort of system, or are you going to send people ingressing and egressing out the same access?
Unfortunately, sir, that's more information than we can provide you at the rezoning. We can let you know that both options are being discussed, however.
Okay.
This is Tina. I have 2 questions I fear may not be able to be answered, but you will let me know. One is I should say a question, a comment. I'm wondering about the UDO as it relates to a school, a landfill being located to a school, near a school, and it doesn't go in the opposite direction. Thank you for going over that. I'm wondering if those considerations have been made on staff part, and in, you know, I understand that in several of the recommendations that were given, streams were considered, and obviously in the topography. So I'm wondering if some of those considerations that were made, if those dealt with that UDO going in the reverse. I raised this question because while I am incredibly excited that there is a new school coming, we all need it. We all know that we need schools, and that I think that you know, as growth continues, each of these will come with their own challenges, and so I don't. I know that this is not going to be an easy process going forward, but I'm just wondering if you know, have concerns about a school being located near a landfill. And so in that, you know, the UDO was put into place so that a landfill took those considerations. So I'm wondering if some of the staff recommendations were the ones that were given also with those considerations, those concerns in mind. So that's number one. And number two, I do appreciate, Ms. Parker, your thoughts on the consideration of one of the recommendations that were given as it relates to its replication of the UDO. And I just want clarity from staff perspective. My fellow neighbors and the board, the town council, are incredibly concerned about our tree canopy and environmental implications that these often come before us, concerns. And so I just want to, if it is duplicative of the current UDO, is part of that to emphasize the importance. And I guess that's a question directed at staff.
Hi, Tina. I am happy to help. So let me address the first one for you. There are several supplemental standards in the UDO related to the location of an inert debris landfill adjacent to a school. One of those is that no part of the land clearing or an inert debris landfill or its ramps, on-site circulation area, or storage areas shall be located within 100 feet of any property line. And I'm only really going to, there's a bunch of them, but I'm only really going to read you the ones that the site doesn't already meet or that haven't been considered because it would further restrict development, if that makes sense. So the other one is that no part of a land clearing and inert debris landfill, its accessory ramps, on-site circulation system, or storage areas shall be sited within 250 feet of a school, child care center, park, church, library, or residential lot. 250 feet is a fairly significant number. Most of the lots in Apex have a depth of about 150 feet to maybe 200 if we're just thinking about our regular single family lots that have been developed within, say, the last 10 years. Just to give you an idea, I don't know what lots y'all live on, but generally when I'm reviewing plans, that's about what I see. So, or you can think about it as a single car parking space is 20 feet long. So you can think about it as 11 parking spaces end to end. I know I have a hard time sometimes with dimensions, so I'm just kind of giving that as an idea, as a way to think about it. Basically, and no, I'm sorry, 12 and a half. 12 and a half parking spaces end to end. I did my math wrong. That's a lot of distance into the site. I'll be honest, we did not look at those conditions because they don't apply in this situation. It's not something that our UDO requires us to do. So we didn't look at those conditions as something that we would put into consideration on this rezoning. Primarily, that's because when a school's already in existence, or a daycare or park or church, or honestly, these affect residential lots as well. When those are already in existence, people have already purchased their property, their kids are already going to school there, and whatever comes in needs to has the responsibility to address any impacts that it has. In this case, the inert debris landfill is already there. The subdivisions around it are already there. It's more of an idea of the new school, the property owners, and the new students hopefully will already know that it's there. It's already in an impact on the area, so we don't normally just think that that the school needs to be the one to mitigate that impact, if that makes sense. So no, we didn't look at those. Also, it would be extremely difficult for this school to locate on this property if they met all of those standards. The site already has a number of topographic constraints, which are going to be a challenge to review around and to design around. And high schools need a big piece of property. So since the UDO didn't require it, that's not something that we looked at.
Shelley?
Yes,
Shelley,
ma'am.
I do think that there's a very large stream buffer on the southern part of this property, so
There
there's
is.
some natural
There is.
buffering that's occurring actually. And I
There's
think
one
Betty has her
here.
hand up in regard probably to that same comment.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I
Betty.
do, Shelley. I completely agree with you. If I could tag on to that, I think Diane makes an excellent point. When we locate school sites, there are some general guiding principles that we use to locate near anything that could potentially be hazardous, whether it's high voltage transmission lines, railroad tracks, or landfills. Here, this is a landfill that's been primarily organic, as we understand it. It's been loosely called a stump dump, where organic tree logging debris has been deposited. And I say that because a lot of the concerns that you have with other types of landfill pose a bigger issue. Regardless, with all of those, we strive to locate our school buildings at least 250 feet away. And when we come back to the things I can't talk about, I will say generally, it's fair to say that our design will contemplate an appropriate distance that will exceed this UDO requirement, even though it's not a requirement in our direction. And a lot of it, I would like to say we did it on purpose, but to be honest, Diane is exactly right. The stream buffers and the topography lend itself to it, but I think that will not be an issue when the site plan comes forward.
I agree. You guys had actually taken the words right out of my mouth and said it way better than I possibly could have. Right about here, if you can kind of follow my mouse, there's kind of a very vague line here where the texture of the trees is a little bit different. That's roughly where that stream buffer is. And it kind of flows up this way to meet this one. Basically, wherever you see trees making a line-ish like that is where a stream is. This one's the biggest one through the development, but there's one that comes down this way as well. And it's 50 feet on either side. And that's and then where Thriftwood is going to dictate kind of where one of the driveways is, because it has to connect to Thriftwood. So it will come down through that area, and there will be a fairly significant natural buffer that way. Regarding your second question, which was the easier one to answer, and I have unfortunately just lost. Could you repeat for me, Tina?
Sure. No, thank you for that. Thank you both, and thank you, Ms. Parker, for answering that question. The other question was related to the provision. I'm sorry, I switched screens, so I don't have the provision up. But the provision that the applicant felt was duplicative of what was already in the UDO because of the expiration. And I definitely heard Ms. Parker's concerns that their intent is to maintain and that wouldn't change. And I appreciate that, but also appreciate the provision. I think the question was, is it related to, was this, even though I so artfully had it before, was it because there is such, from our neighbors and from the town council, a desire to preserve tree canopy and protect the environment? Was this recommended by staff to sort of put an exclamation point on those pieces, and to ensure that although the intent is there, to ensure that I think it was the buffers were maintained.
Right. It's actually a twofold situation. It is definitely as a result of concerns about environmental factors in tree protection. But this was something that the Water Resources Department brought up to Town Council and pointed out that this permit was going to expire and it was going to have this change. Town Council then reviewed this with Water Resources, Planning, and the Legal Department. And I'm sure there were other people involved, but those are the three that I'm aware of, to try to find a way to preserve that tool for us, and just in case, because we don't have any guarantee that permit will be extended, or that the conditions in the new permit will be the same as the conditions in the existing permit. And what we came up with in conjunction with Water Resources and Real Estate was that a zoning condition is our best bet for those properties that are rezoning in these two areas. When that was delivered to Town Council and that recommendation, they directed us specifically to ask for this condition on every rezoning that happens in those two basins, the Middle Creek Basin and Big Branch. Those are our two southernmost watershed basins. So Middle Creek is this area, Big Branch kind of extends along US 1 roughly, and Old US 1. So because of that, we are actually following Town Council's mandate to request this on everything. I actually took a rezoning to Planning Board and Town Council, I want to say in December or November. It was the rezoning for Holloman Hills South next to the town's water reclamation facility that we share with Cary. And the applicant in that case did not offer that condition up, and Town Council told them that they wouldn't approve it without it. Now, there's a little bit of a difference in timing between that type of development and this one. But the reality is that projects get put on hold all the time. This school is unlikely to get put on hold, but it is possible that the Board of Education will determine that they have another couple projects that need to move ahead faster, and that this one will get put on hold until after the UDO has to be changed, until after we lose that permit expires, and maybe the state decides not to extend our ability to use those perennial buffers. Perennial buffers are or stream buffers are one of our best tools for water quality. And although we recognize that the school is unlikely to be put on hold, we've been directed by Town Council to request this on everything.
So I just want to make a clarification. This is Diane, Ken.
Yes, ma'am.
It was actually the Planning Committee of Town Council, and it's not a mandate. They just wanted us to talk with every applicant about having this condition because it is very important to them. And when the project did go to the Town Council, they talked with the applicant and basically said that they were very interested in having the condition. I don't believe they said they would not approve it. They just said they were very interested, and the applicant did offer it. We've not had a lot of projects go through, so we don't know, if council will say this one is fine the way, without the condition, or it's not fine without the condition. We don't know. I would say that having the inert debris landfill so close to the property does make this condition even more important to keep. But the school system does not have to offer it. It is not a requirement of the ordinance. And, in terms of you have to offer conditions just because the council has asked for them. It's always up to the applicant under state law to either proffer the condition or to continue to give their reasoning for not wanting to do it.
Thank you, Beth.
So with this, so this is Mark. So thanks for all of those very detailed answers. So I guess I would ask Betty to respond to this question, given all that background. You made in your comments, Betty, you said that you thought it was duplicative, and so therefore you didn't want to basically tie the hands. Not my words, not yours. But I guess I'd flip that on its head and say, given that it is duplicative, and given what Diane just said, that it could be, if there was any unforeseen and unplanned delay, then it would expose the town to having this condition. Then it wouldn't be duplicative. So what is the harm in the school district agreeing or offering this condition? What is the harm to the school district?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think the harm is that it binds the school board in perpetuity, not just past this particular, but for all time. What we've seen over time is environmental conditions and requirements and the science behind them ebbs and flows. There's been a period of time at which science indicated 50 feet was sufficient to protect water quality. It expanded to where we ran into some municipalities that chose to buffer at 100 or 150 feet. Some have swung back to 50. Some legislation has suggested 50 is sufficient. The science's ability to change over time as we learn more about water and water quality could bind us to something that's far more than the town requires in the future. Town UDOs adjust as state legislation does. So I think what we'd prefer is not to stake ourselves out, but to reiterate that this is a single project that will fully develop the site. If this were a neighborhood coming in phases to where we only wanted to permit phase 1 and then see if the town extended its UDO requirement under the permit or not, and then we came back for phase 2, I can envision some circumstances where project funding is uncertain, where there could be project delay, where there could be reasons where this could come back up. And frankly, I just don't see that this project fits it. This project is coming in somewhere at $100.5 million. The cost of delaying it by 1 year with the escalation we're seeing is somewhere between 8 and 10%. That is a huge price to lose. So our CIP is very carefully crafted to identify which schools are going to be built when. An architect is under contract, CM is under contract. We're very close to a site plan. The project has been fully funded in the current CIP. So we don't see any reason that this would be delayed. So we're applying under the UDO as it currently states. I think I might be more inclined to give a different consideration if it weren't for the fact that the legislation in question was passed and the town has already received its extension once. We just feel like we'll be long done before this current one with our permitting process and site plan approvals before the current permit expires, and the town has it within its authority to extend. So it just seems duplicative, and I'm just not comfortable applying something that, as the science has changed over time, may prove to be either restrictive more than the town would want, and it would give us an advantage, or too restrictive, not enough. And it just seems more appropriate that there's a UDO in process in place to review projects as they come up, and we want to be in compliance with what those are.
Thank you. That was a very good, very detailed answer. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Quick question from the public comment, just to get clarification. So they stated that the roads were private, not NCDOT. Can either staff or Ms. Parker, can you confirm or deny that they are?
Absolutely. I'm happy to address that. Those two roads in particular are 60-foot wide public roads. They were dedicated on a neighborhood plat when that subdivision was approved by Wake County in 1986. So that's part of the Wake County Register of Deeds public record. There was a formal letter of accepting the dedication by Wake County, who was the authority having jurisdiction at the time. Both of these roads appeared on the town's 2045 Thoroughfare and Collector Plan. The town doesn't put private roads on that for future development, so there was a recognition there. And also, Wake County GIS records depict that those roads have been treated as public. Although they may be maintained privately, we have had We've had 2 letters shared with us where prior developers have reached out to DOT to understand what would be required for DOT to take over maintenance. Their dedication for public use occurred some time ago. The only remaining piece is maintenance, and that's something that we'll be pursuing with DOT through our project.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Parker.
Yes, sir.
Somebody has their hand up. I'm not sure who that is. Went away. Anybody else from the board have any other questions for staff or for Ms. Parker?
Chairman, that was me that had my hand up. I did have one additional question for Ms. Parker. I appreciated her statement about looking out for the Wake County tax dollars, particularly on the future and highest best use of the land. In concert with that and kind of keeping that theme and knowing that we just passed our affordable housing plan in Apex, I know that the county school has been a good partner with oftentimes finding lands in some of these projects that we can use towards affordable housing projects. And I just asked, maybe it's an applicant or a staff question, but why would we restrict the proposed zoning conditions to exclude any potential future would allow that partnership in the future?
I'm not. Go ahead.
Go ahead, please,
I don't
Betty.
think we asked for those uses to be removed. I'm not sure.
No,
we did not.
We did not, Mr. Akers. We requested the additional uses to be restored that the UDO typically permits for schools. And we also asked for a few of the communication uses that are typically permitted either with special permits or not, because what we find is over time, the data and communications links that schools need to operate in the environment could change. And we wanted to be sure that those were restored. I don't think we've done anything to eliminate the residential capacity that was already there from the prior zoning.
Unfortunately, I apologize, Betty, for interrupting. Unfortunately, that's not quite correct. The list of uses that are in the application is the only uses that are currently considered or assuming that the rezoning is approved, would be the only uses that would be considered permitted on this parcel. Mm-hmm. So if the intent is to add back in residential uses in addition to the school uses, we would need to add those to the list of approved. Approved. So we could put, we could definitely do something. We could add in medium density allows single family residential townhomes, no, single family residential. I'm pulling up my list right now. And I think duplexes, come on.
Well, Shelley, while you're doing that, thank you for the clarification. Ma'am. I was on the same page with Diane. We wouldn't oppose leaving those original residential uses in. What I have found, depending on the municipality that I'm in for the particular rezoning, is various towns have various standards. So some want to see it very narrowly construed towards our intended use, because as one of the members mentioned earlier, there's no guarantee that anything will be built as represented. So there has been some concern on other sites where the public did not want more than one use, or they had concerns that we might walk away and a higher density residential would come in than had ever been previously considered. So my only thought would be from the school system's perspective, I don't think we would oppose the inclusion of residential, but from a process perspective, that's not what we, that's not what we would have shared at our neighborhood meeting had we had any attendees. But I just want to be sure that we're not going to run afoul of the public process by making a change at this point. But Shelley, I'll defer to you.
Well, this is Diane. I actually would say that based on the current council, they probably fall more in the camp that they would rather just see the school be the approved use. The site is of such a size that there's not going to be a whole lot of opportunity to do anything except the high school there.
Mm-hmm. It is very tight. I do agree with that.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And Mr. Akers, I appreciate your recognition of our collaboration in the past. Affordable housing is very important to us, and we're looking forward to that collaboration on the elementary school site we recently rezoned.
This is Elaine Boyle. I have a question kind of circling back on Dairy Down and Thriftwood and the public comment about the increased traffic, expected on that. Do we have results of a traffic study or vehicles per day and what we project to come through there when the high school is open?
Hello, Elaine. In this type of rezoning petition, we do not have a traffic impact analysis to share. That is shared at the major site plan level.
Got it.
So unfortunately, although staff has received it and reviewed it, that's not information that I can share with this particular project at this particular level.
Yeah. Since Elaine is new to us, we ought to make sure that we let her know that we don't see major site plans anymore.
That's true. Those only go to town council.
Right.
Those are now a planned unit development conditional zoning does require a TIA be provided, assuming it meets the town's thresholds. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of rezoning that you would see that at, mm-hmm. but not at a what we consider a more typical medium density conditional zoning.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
I think Tommy, you had your hand up.
I got a question about Dairy Down and Thistle or Thriftwood. On Wake County's IMAPS website, it doesn't look like those roads actually extend all the way to the property of the site. Is that true? Are you guys going to extend that, make that happen then?
That's a great question. I'm sorry, Shelley. Am I jumping in too soon?
No, please go right ahead.
Okay. The rights of way for those roads extend to the property boundary. The development of the road itself within that right of way does not yet extend. Okay. Our expectation is, as the traffic studies are reviewed with NCDOT, they will dictate the depth, size, type of pavement, whatever they require to bring that road up to a state maintenance standard. And it will extend all the way to our boundaries. At that point, I expect, since given the previous transportation plan changes in the previous item, at that point, they will stub into basically our driveway. And of course, they'll be terminated appropriately. So the pavement will be extended all the way there. It's not very far short now. There's a small stand of trees at the end of either one.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing none, we will resume this discussion. And if there's other public comments that come in, we'll hear those and have a possible motion and vote on the 10th. Thank you, Ms. Parker, for all your insight.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and especially staff.
All right. With that, we will move to item number 4. Shannon is going to present the public hearing regarding amendments to the 2045 land use map related to the transit-oriented development.
Hello again, and I do want to give you fair warning, Mr. Marks, that this item is a little bit on the long side. Okay. So I don't know if you were thinking the planning board might need a break.
Yeah, since it's been an hour and a half into the process, why don't we, let's see, it's 6:06 now. Why don't we go till 6:12, 6 minutes for a quick little break and stretch. I just need a motion for a quick adjournment and a
motion to adjourn.
Okay, and then second?
I'll second that.
Wait, who made the first? Was that Tommy?
Keith?
Oh, that was Keith. Okay,
But
Keith
I'll second
Braswell made
that.
the motion, and who's second?
Reggie will second.
Okay, Reggie, second. So just quick roll call. Michael Marks, yes. Reggie,
Yes.
Mark Steele. Mark, you're on mute. Mark, you're still on mute. All right, Mark may have already taken a break. Tommy Pate. Tommy.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Tim Royal.
Yes.
Keith Braswell.
Yes.
Ryan Akers.
Sure thing.
Elaine Boyle.
Yes.
Okay. One more check for Mark, otherwise it'll pass 8 to 1. So, okay. All right. So the motion passes. Since we'll come back in 5 minutes, 6:13. We'll see everybody back in a few minutes. All right, Shannon, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm just going to roll call everybody, make sure we're back. So Michael Marks is here. Reggie, are you back?
I am present.
Okay, Mark Steele. Mark, you're on mute if you're here. No Mark yet. Tina Sherman.
Present.
Okay. Tommy Pate.
Right here.
Tim Royal.
Present.
Keith Braswell.
Present.
Ryan Akers.
Here.
Elaine Boyle.
Here.
See you. One more. Mark Steele, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. All right. We are all back. And now Shannon is going to provide information on the public hearing regarding the amendments to the 2045 land use map related to the transit-oriented development. Take it away, Shannon.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm using both my screens, so I cannot see you. So if you need to interrupt me, please just do so verbally. So the purpose of all of the proposed amendments that we'll go over this evening for the 2045 land use map are intended to promote transit-oriented development. So generally, they would increase residential densities or support mixed-use development along both current and planned future transit routes. And I do want to note that this is consistent with the newly adopted Town of Apex Affordable Housing Plan, which included a recommendation for TOD density. The proposed amendments were actually initiated by the Planning Committee of Town Council. The Planning Committee asked staff to look at approximately 300-yard buffers of our transit routes, including Go Triangle Route 305, Go Apex Route 1, and Go Apex Cary Express. So that is about a little less than a quarter mile of a buffer around each of those routes. And then within those buffer areas, we narrowed down and looked at specific areas where potential amendments to the land use map made sense. Those staff recommendations were reviewed with the Planning Committee of Town Council. We did then have a neighborhood meeting for Chapel Ridge specifically because of some ongoing questions and potential changes in that area. And we then hosted a virtual public workshop for anyone in the community who wanted to learn more and offer comments or ask questions. We have had a comment form open for people to provide input. That comment form remains open and will through the Town Council public hearing. So I will be summarizing public comments throughout this presentation. You did also receive the full report with my staff report. We've received a few more, so some of the percentages that I'll share are a little bit different. So all of these boxed areas with a letter represent areas with a proposed amendment to the 2045 land use map. So all the amendments fall within one of these areas, and I'll be walking through them one by one. But first, just a reminder, the green line here represents the Apex Cary Express. This is our newest transit route that just started January of 2021. The blue line represents Go Triangle Route 305. It extends between Holly Springs, Apex, and Raleigh. And this is the route where we're anticipating all day and weekend service later this year. The yellow route is Go Apex Route 1, and this is the one that we are actively working on implementing with service anticipated this year as well. And then the final route is the purple. That is Go Triangle Route 311. It's temporarily suspended during the pandemic and is a commuter route, so we did not actually consider potential amendments around that route. So the planning board, I know, is familiar with our different land use types, but I did want to explain this A designation that you'll now see on some of these amendments. So this A represents a special designation of high density where only apartments would be allowed. So typically high density could be townhomes, triplexes, quadplexes, or apartments. This new A indicates that the vision is really for apartments near transit. We're going for the highest density possible. So I'll go through these one by one. The first area where we have amendments proposed is at Laura Duncan Road and Camden Drive. This is on our border with the town of Cary. There are some office uses here and then some areas that are undeveloped. The adopted 2045 land use map shows the entire area as commercial services. The proposed amendment presented to the public added the high density residential land use with the apartment designation. In the comments we've received so far, 69% of respondents prefer the proposed amendment. We received some input that this should be designed as a gateway to Apex. Some commenters do support the mixed use vision. Others would prefer commercial to support nearby residential development. There was some concern about parking and traffic. And we received a comment that there's a preference for this to remain undeveloped. And I will note that we received that comment for all of the proposed amendments. So for this area, planning staff recommend the amendments as presented to the public. The next area we're calling Downtown North that includes parcels along North Hughes Street, which are owned and occupied by Jordan Oil, and parcels in this triangle surrounded by Old Raleigh Road, Apex Peakway, and Laura Duncan Road. This is Shepherd's Vineyard Shopping Center anchored by Food Lion. The 2045 adopted map shows commercial services for the Apex Peakway area and industrial employment for the North Hughes area. The proposed amendment for the Apex Peakway area is to add high density residential with the apartment designation. The proposed amendment for the North Hughes area is to change this to office employment with high density residential and the apartment designation. 62% of respondents so far do propose the proposed amendments, do prefer the proposed amendments. We received some comments that support mixed use development, that we should prioritize walkability in these areas. There were some comments that the Peakway area should remain commercial, given that there's been some residential development in the area already. For this area, people would like to see some senior housing near the new senior center. And again, we received the comments to maintain green space, including designating some of these areas as park, public, or private. Again, staff are recommending support of the amendments as presented to the public without further changes. The next area we're calling Downtown South. This is along South Salem Street and East Moore Street. There's a bank here currently with parking in the back and lawn area. The adopted plan shows medium density residential and office employment. The amendment presented to the public added the high density residential stripe with the apartment designation. 50% of respondents did prefer the proposed amendment. Again, we received the comment about park, public, or private. Some comments about maintaining parking, making sure that we're connecting to downtown, and then using this area to expand downtown with shops, restaurants, art, etc. Planning staff are recommending a revision to the amendment. We would suggest removing the medium density residential stripe and adding commercial. This is intended to encourage vertical mixed use and really support apartments developing over active ground floor use. And so I'll show you what that would look like. You would have the commercial and the high density residential stripe here. The next area is called Downtown West. This includes 3 areas. The first is along Hunter Street, and this is where Fire Station number 3 fronts Hunter Street, and then there's an undeveloped portion of the parcel in the back. The next area is along West Williams between Walgreens and the post office, and this area is undeveloped. And then the third area is along West Chatham, mostly single family residences here adjacent to Lake Ridge Apartments. The adopted plan shows office employment along Hunter Street. And for this area, the proposed amendment is to add high density residential with the apartment designation. The adopted plan shows office employment and commercial services along West Williams, and the proposed amendment is to change that to high density residential with the apartment designation and commercial services. And for West Chatham, the adopted map shows medium density residential, and the amendment presented to the public showed a high density residential stripe with the apartment designation. Planning staff are recommending one revision to these proposed amendments, and that is to remove the apartment designation from the West Chatham area. So you can see that here, go back and forth. I'm sorry, I did not go over the public comments for this one. So public comments, 43% of respondents we've heard from so far do prefer the proposed amendments, and then 40% prefer the existing map. 17% are looking for just something else. For the area along West Chatham, a property owner requested that we add commercial services here with the idea that it could become a hotel in the future, which is consistent with downtown plan recommendations to have a hotel serving downtown. We received several comments, and some will be read during the public hearing related to West Williams Street. There were requests to show office, commercial services, and medium density residential here instead of the commercial services and high density residential. There were comments related to concerns about noise, light, privacy, and stormwater for the neighborhood back here. And then some comments were more related to an anticipated rezoning of this property and not the land use map designation. Again, we heard comments about maintaining trees in all of these areas, as well as some comments about traffic concerns. There were no specific comments about the Hunter Street area. So again, the staff recommendation is to support these as proposed with the one change to the West Chatham area. The next area we are calling Apex Peakway South. This again includes 2 areas. The first is bordered by South Hughes Street and Perry Road. It's undeveloped, but it's currently used as a soccer field. It's adjacent to the Norris Park development. And the second area is along Apex Peakway and Tingen Road, also undeveloped and near Salem Villages. So for the Perry Road area, the adopted map shows office employment, and the proposed amendment is to add the high-density residential stripe with the apartment designation. For the Tingen Road area, the adopted map shows medium-density residential, and the amendment presented to the public was to add the high-density residential stripe. Overall, 58% of respondents indicate a preference for the proposed amendments. And then we had about 21% who prefer the adopted map and 21% looking for something else. Again, we had comments indicating a preference for existing conditions, including maintaining the trees that are there now. We received comments to keep the higher density portion of this area closer to Apex Peakway and provide some buffer with Salem Village. In particular, some commenters wanted to make sure that this small parcel was not a part of the proposed amendments, which it's not. Again, over here, we received comment to either add the apartment designation or change the medium density residential to a medium high density residential stripe. And then for the South Hughes Perry Road, we had a request from property owners to continue the designation along South Hughes all the way up to the intersection. Planning staff recommend keeping the proposed amendment for the Perry Road area as presented to the public. And we do recommend adding the medium high density residential stripe for the Tingen Road area. So this is the revised amendment as recommended by planning staff. And then the final area is Beaver Creek, Chapel Ridge, and Vision Drive. So you see Vision Drive located up here. This is currently occupied by Lifetime Fitness. The Beaver Creek Crossings Shopping Center is in here with a strip of undeveloped area adjacent to 540. And then the Chapel Ridge neighborhood is located here. We'll start with the Vision Drive area. The adopted plan shows commercial services. The recommended or the amendment presented to the public added the high density residential stripe with apartment designation. And the idea here is that a trend that we're seeing is that in these developments where there's large box type stores, apartments are often being developed on top to create more of a mixed use area where there's people both living and using the ground floor uses. So this is trying to prepare for that type of vision. Similarly, with Beaver Creek Crossings, there's a potential opportunity for that. And so the adopted plan shows all commercial services. The amendment adds high density residential with the apartment designation. And then the Chapel Ridge area is currently shown as medium density residential. The amendment would change this to medium, high, and high density residential. This area is inside of 540. There's a transportation network already in place. It's adjacent to commercial. Some office has already been developed, and it is anticipated to be along Go Apex Route 1. In the public comments, 52% of respondents indicated a preference for the amendments as proposed. 36% indicated a preference for the adopted plan, and 12% were looking for something else. There were comments against high-density residential in the Chapel Ridge neighborhood, and a preference among some commenters to leave that neighborhood as is. There was some support for changing the commercial services areas to high-density residential plus commercial services. And we did receive some comments, once again, to leave this area adjacent to 540 as is without any further development. Finally, there were some comments related to concerns about traffic once again. Planning staff support the amendments as presented to the public for both the Chapel Ridge area and Beaver Creek Commons Drive area. We are recommending a revision to the Vision Drive area, and that is to actually extend the amendment to the parcel that's behind Lifetime Fitness, which I'll show you. It's not developed right now. It's adjacent to the shopping center and US 64. So we would like to include that area in the proposed amendments, and it would then look like this. This slide is just a summary in case you need to reference it as you consider the amendments and prepare for a potential motion. And I do have, when you're ready, a couple of public hearing comments to read.
Thank you, Shannon. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments for Shannon at this moment? All right, hearing none, why don't we'll open up the public comment section. Shannon, if you want to read any comments that came in between up till noon on Friday.
Okay, yes, the first was an individual comment, so I'll just read that one. It is, hi, my name is Elizabeth O'Brien, and I currently live at 710 Midsummer Lane, Apex, North Carolina, 27502 in the Amherst subdivision. It is my understanding that the parcel of land in question is under consideration to be rezoned for potential commercial residential property. Based on the fact that this property is very close in proximity to a creek, I do not think this property would be a good fit for a large-scale commercial property. I think that such a large-scale property would cause great harm environmentally to that area, and I think in the long term, there will be some issues with erosion and pollution, not only for this potential property, but also for the properties of the nearby Amherst neighbors. I also have concerns about how such a potential commercial residential property would impact my Amherst neighbors who live close to this parcel. I worry that it will have an effect on their current quality of life and ability to enjoy their properties without excess noise, pollution, and all the other elements that would come with a commercial residential property. I do hope this will be taken into consideration when reviewing this parcel for possible rezoning. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to the screen with these comments and questions so that you can look at it. So it's this area that we're talking about. And then the second public hearing comment, I received 7 of these, so 7 similar comments. So I'll just read one. And that is, we are residents of the Amherst subdivision, which is adjacent to 0 West William Street, and one of the lots proposed for amendment today. We would like to propose a change to the recommendation. This lot is grouped in Amendment Area D, Downtown West, in the slide presentation provided by the town. The current designation on the existing Apex 2045 land use map is Office Employment Commercial Services. The proposed designation with this proposed amendment is high density residential commercial services. We would like to object to this and recommend medium density residential office employment commercial services for the following reasons. This would include current office employment designation that is dropped with proposed amendment. Existing irregular and sloped land elevations are problematic for large apartment buildings and would be better suited for smaller footprint structures. Use would be consistent with existing residential developments adjacent to parcels that contain single-family homes and townhomes. Use is more consistent with existing negotiated PUD-CU zoning previously negotiated between property owners designed to work with the sloping land elevations, privacy, noise, and structure placement and size. Possible protection of existing natural pond, stream, and trees with smaller footprint development. And finally, development in the area along William Street has traditionally been built at existing land elevations, causing many shopping centers, businesses, etc., to be built either on a slope, a hill, or down below road grade. And that concludes the public comments received. Again, there were 7 copies of that one I just read.
Okay. Thank you. So that was all the public comments. Okay. So I guess we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussions and any other questions. A lot was presented. I guess, Shannon, would you be able to kind of send out a revised of what you just presented with staff's latest recommendations? I think that would be helpful to have to review over the next day and a half.
Yes, I can send that out, and we have made that available on the website as well now.
Oh, it is on the website. Okay.
It's at apexnc.org/2045LUM, but I will make a note to send that to the planning board as well.
Okay. And if you could go ahead and include the 2 public comments, if you can just attach those, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, discussions?
Chairman, this is Ryan Akers. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to state that I'm really proud of staff and some of the planning committee members that have taken the direction that we need affordable housing and housing affordability, and this helps get us in that direction. So I think this has been a long time coming. It really is tough when a lot of neighbors don't want density next to them. But I think it's an evolution of a small town growing into a medium-sized town, and I'm really proud of all the work that went into this, so thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Ryan. Anyone else? I'll just say I attended the virtual presentation that you did, Shannon, and you put a lot of work into this, so just to echo kind of what Ryan said and just my own, you guys have done a great job pulling this all together. It's a lot of work. So thank you for all your effort and time.
Well, I want to pass credit along to several team members who've been working hard on this. It was definitely not just me. So I'm just in front today.
Okay. Yeah, there was other people on the call. But yeah, appreciate the whole team. Thank you. If I don't hear any other comments or discussion points, we will come back on the 10th and possible motion and a vote. I guess before we come back, just maybe to throw this out to the board, do we want to vote on these individually or all as a group? Do we think any discussion on that?
Can we decide that on Wednesday? I'd just be curious as to any additional feedback we get.
That's sure. That's fine. Good idea, Tim. We'll just think about it. Like I said, if there's enough, we don't have to do it as a whole packet. We can do it individually. So we'll see what comments come in and decide on Wednesday. All right. If there's no other comments, we will go to item number 5 that Sarah's going to present, a public hearing regarding rezoning case 21 CZ01, the Wolf Properties PUD.
Hey, Mike, I'll need to recuse myself from this one. I did some work for this one, so.
I saw that, so I just need a motion, and we need to have a second and a vote to recuse Tommy from this. He had some financial processes involved with this case. So can I have a
This is
motion and a
Reggie.
second?
This is Reggie. I'll make a motion to recuse Tommy from this.
Okay, I have a
And-
motion to. And a
It's
second?
Mark Steele seconding Reggie's.
Okay. And we'll just do a quick roll call. Michael Marks, yes. Reggie?
Yes.
Yes. Mark Steele?
Yes.
Tina Sherman?
Yes.
I guess, I don't know, Tommy, go ahead and vote that you want to recuse
Yes.
yourself. Yes. Tim Royal?
Yes.
Keith Braswell?
Yes.
Ryan Akers?
Yes.
And Elaine Boyle?
Yes.
All right. So Tommy, you can turn your mic off and turn your video off for now, and we'll go back and let Sarah present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'll be presenting rezoning case 21CC01 Wolf Properties PUD amendment. Next slide. For those of you following along, we're talking about property assemblage in this general vicinity here. This is Wimberley Road along here and north of 64. Bringing us further into the site, we're looking at this assemblage here of properties. Y'all may remember seeing this back in, I believe, June of 2020 is when this would have come to you under zoning case 19CZ22. So the existing zoning here for the site is PUD conditional zoning 19CZ22. The proposed zoning district is planned unit development conditional zoning as well. Again, this is a PUD amendment. The 2045 land use map is low density residential. There's no change to the density or total unit counts. All of that remains consistent. I'll just take you here to the overall site as we go along. Again, this is a PUD amendment. We're looking at just over 43.5 acres in total here. Several of the properties contain residential structures but are otherwise wooded. So there's no changes to the existing conditions. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on December 28th, 2020. They also conducted another neighborhood meeting February 5th, 2021. Planning board members, y'all received a copy of that neighborhood meeting report via email today. The original Wolf Properties PUD was submitted prior to the agreement with Wake County Public School System to provide a letter of impact on rezonings, including residential development. Since the proposed PUD amendment does not include any changes to the approved density, a letter of impact was not requested. So again, this is a PUD amendment, and essentially what we are looking at are some changes to allow for flexibility now that the master subdivision is going through plan review and that Public Safety Station 6 is also in review. So that is government services in this area here, future Public Safety Station 6, and then the master subdivision plan all through here. So you've got in your staff report, your planning board packet, you have all of the details, but essentially there were some language changes to address things such as interior buffers from future town property to existing town property, streetscape buffers, setbacks for government uses, some mitigation for slopes on the play lawns in the master subdivision area, building materials for future government service use, and also to update zoning conditions for project timing for things such under road improvements, CD approval timing, and land dedication. So essentially that is what is covered in the PUD amendment, those type of changes. If you have any questions about specific language changes that were presented in the staff report, please let me know and I'll be happy to go over those.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Sarah at this time?
Planning staff recommends approval of the 21 CZ01 Wolf Properties PUD amendment with the conditions as offered by the applicant. Staff finds that approval of the rezoning is reasonable because the proposed planned unit development conditional zoning district is consistent with the 2045 land use map classification of low density residential, and that the proposed rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because it will provide flexibility necessary to ensure cohesive development plans for future capital projects. The applicant, Andy Petty with Curry Engineering, is here as well should you have any questions for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions for Sarah before we let the applicant make a brief statement if they wish to? All right, Mr. Petty, do you want to make any comments?
I'll make it really brief. This is Andy Petty, Curry Engineering, 205 South Fuquay Avenue here in Fuquay. I just want to thank the board for hearing us. I do apologize for the multiple neighborhood meetings that you guys got. We had a little snafu here in the office and a couple people didn't get notified, so we did notify them, but they did not attend, so there was not a whole lot on the meeting, but we feel like we've vetted this one out pretty good, and we've been working with the staff on this for quite some time. We feel like we've got a pretty good amendment, and we humbly ask for your support in it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Petty. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Petty? All right, thank you, Andy. Sarah, were there any public comments that came in during the comment period?
No, there were not.
All right, no comment. So I will close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the board for any discussions. Any comments at this point from anybody?
I have a question, Chairman.
Okay.
For the land is surrounded that did not go with the PUD on for Wimberley Road there, are they not changing the zoning on those as well at the same time or for later?
If I may, are you talking about this property here?
I am.
Okay. No, it's not current. It's not part of the previous zoning or the current PUD amendment.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Keith. Anybody else?
This is Ryan Akers. Just a quick question. The EMS station, that's part of this PUD, but is running concurrent with a site plan, concurrent with the master subdivision. Is that correct?
Yes. So the master subdivision plan is a little further along, but the public safety station 6 has just come in, and that's for this area here. So essentially, we've all been working together, and the PUD amendment essentially addresses any items for flexibility.
Thank you. That was just more of me wanting to know for personal reasons because I live off Wimberley Road. I think this is great to have an EMS station over here.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Any other comments or discussion? All right, hearing none, we will bring this one back on Wednesday for any possible motions and a vote, and any other discussions or any other comments will be read at that time. And just a quick question for Diane, do we need a vote to bring Tommy back in, or is we just?
I don't think so. He's recused on this item, and I mean, I guess you can. All you're going to do is
vote for adjournment. So.
Adjournment. That's not really necessary.
All right, Tommy, you can just hang out. We'll just do this. So there are no more new business items, and the public agenda is complete. So I just need a motion for adjournment. Just remember, we will reconvene at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, February 10th. Check your emails if we get any other public comments. There may come in, and otherwise we'll be right at that meeting. So I just need a motion to adjourn.
This is Reggie, so move.
Okay, we've got a motion from Reggie. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
That was Ryan seconding. All right, I got a motion to adjourn, and we'll see everybody next Wednesday. So Michael Marks votes yes. Reggie Skinner.
Yes.
Mark Steele,
Yes.
Tina Sherman,
Yes.
Tommy Pate.
Yes.
Oh, yep. Tim Royal,
Yes.
Keith Braswell,
Yes.
Ryan Akers,
Yes.
and Elaine Boyle.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully we'll be back in chambers in March. We'll see what town council decides, but thank you for everybody's time and working through this virtual meeting. We'll see you on Wednesday.
All right, guys.